We begin today the Gemara on Daf Tzadik Dalet Amud Beis, 4 lines up from the bottom of the Amud, where it says To Shema. The Gemara is discussing here a statement from Rav Huna. It said in the Mishnah that when a person sells produce and there's tinoifis, there's impurities in it, if it's up to the amount of a roiva, a quarter of a kav in a saw, then we say that that's acceptable. And the buyer takes it and he can't complain about it. But when it comes to more than that amount, then you could take it out. So Rav Huna said that if there's more than that roiva, and now the buyer is coming to sift it out, once there was more than that amount of a roiva, he could now sift it out and clean it out completely. We're not going to say that he can just clean it out, that it should be just the amount of the roiva which is acceptable. He can now clean it out completely. The Gemara explained before two opinions how to understand this. Either this is me'ikar adin, or it's a knas. So now the Gemara here continues bringing different braises to ask, or as a source on what Rav Huna said is this din. Zok the Gemara Toshema Tani Ravim bar Rav Nachman. Ravim bar Rav Nachman taught, and this is regarding a Mishnah here later here in the beginning of the next Perek, base kor offer. This is when a person sells somebody a piece of land, and he tells them that I'm selling you this piece of land which is the size of a base kor offer. Base kor is the size of 30 saw. Now, if it turns out that area that he sold him, it's a little bit more or a little bit less, so then, if it's within the amount of a roiva, again, this shear of a roiva of a kav, so then the sale is acceptable. The buyer takes the sale, and you can't complain about it being a little bit more or a little bit less. But if it's beyond that amount, it's beyond that margin of error of that roiva, then he can say that he doesn't want to accept the sale as is. Now, in this, Ravim bar Rav Nachman said, it's not only that extra amount, more than that roiva, that the seller is going to have to give him back and give him what he deserves. If you see in the size of the field that it's more than a roiva and it's more than 2 or 3 roivas, so now we're not going to say, he only has to give him up to that amount of a roiva. Now he has to give it to him all perfectly a full base core. So what do we see from here? Alma, we see, whenever you do have to give, when the seller does have to give him the full amount that he said he's going to sell, we say that now, since he gave him less than the amount, and that the less was not only a roiva less, but even more less, so you see he owes him more, now he has to give it to him fully complete. So the same thing applies over here to what Rav Huna said, that when you're buying produce with impurities in it, once it's more than the amount of roiva, and now you have to give it, you have to allow him to clean it out, he can clean it out all the way. So the Gemara says you can't compare these two cases. There's no comparison. Why not? Because Hassam over there, hein chaser, hein yater amalei. The case is that he's selling him the base core, and he spelled out to him. He said to him, I'm selling you the base core, whether it's going to be a little less, whether it's going to be a little more, that's what I'm selling you. Now, what did he mean when he said hein chaser, hein yater? The fact that he's spelling out hein chaser, hein yater is because he's telling him, look, really, I'm selling you a full base core. If there's going to be a little less, a little more, the sale should also be in effect. So therefore we say, miu roiva lo choshev, that if it's a little amount of a roiva, so that's something that's not choshev, and therefore that is what he meant when he said chaser or yater, that I can't be exact. It's very hard to tell you that I should measure the field, it should be exact, and therefore if it'll be a little more, a little less, that's insignificant, and therefore that's what he meant to clarify, that the sale should still be in effect. But if it's yesem rivia, if it's more than a quarter, then choshev, then that's a significant amount that he's not giving him of the shear that he's supposed to give. And here the Gemara adds, some say that the Rashbam is not good as this, but that what does it mean that it's choshev? The kivin, the chazile, litztarufi, betish's kaven, since it's already more than amount of a roiva, could be a few roivas of a kav, it's enough of amount that could be combined to an area of a field that's 9 kav, which is really a significant piece of a property. So therefore this is a significant piece of land for itself, and therefore this has to now go back, this has to be given all to the buyer, he has to get this entire field. So in other words, the point that the Gemara is saying over here is that when you sell a piece of field and you say a certain size, what's the intention of the buyer? He wants to buy that size. That's what he's paying for. He's really paying for a base core. Elamai, because he spelled out to him specifically, hen chaser v'hen yater, so if it's a little bit off and it's not 100% accurate, so then he's masking on that. But other than that little inaccuracy, he really does want the entire base core. So if it's going to be more than a base roiva that it's not accurate, so then we say that no, he has to give him now the entire field accurately, because that's really what he's paying for, an entire base core. Masha'en came, when it comes over here to the case of the impurities that there is inside the produce, he's lechatchila not really expecting to get absolutely pure produce without any impurities. It's understood that it's expected that there's going to be those impurities inside. So over here, in such a case, we could still say that if there was additional impurities more than the share of Beis Reiva, not necessarily could you allow now the buyer to clean it out all completely, because that amount of impurities is to be expected here. The Rashbam actually says that in the Maskana of the Gemara later in the next Perek, it says that this halacha is true even if the seller does not say to him, hein chaser, hein yater. The main point of the answer over here is that when it comes to a core, you can't say that a person that buys a piece of property and you told him a certain measurement that the buyer is expecting that it's going to be inaccurate. He's not expecting. Elamai, if it ends up being a little bit inaccurate because it's hard to measure, so since it's insignificant, he'll be meichelet. He'll be meichelet. But once it's already inaccurate to a larger size, he says, so give me exactly what the size is supposed to be. But by a case over here, when we're selling produce with impurities, this is something which it's expected that is going to be, whether, we said before, whether there could be kidneys mixed inside, there could be dirt mixed inside. That's something that is chatchila, part of the understanding and the acceptance. So therefore over here, lav dafka, you allow him to clean it out completely. Toshama, the Gemara tries to bring a raya from another halacha, the halacha of when you are when you deceive someone in a sale. Hayno, what are the halachas of hayno? Pachas mishtos, if you overcharged him, but it's less than the value of the sixth of it, then nikna mekach. The sale is in effect, and that little inaccuracy in the price is he's moichelit. Yes, if you overcharge him and it's more than a sixth of the value, then batel mekach, then the whole sale is batel. If it's a shtos, if you overcharge and it's the amount of a sixth, then kana, the sale is in effect, umachzarena, and the seller has to give back that amount of money that he overcharged. He has to fully return to him that amount of money. Now, what do we see here? That amount of a sixth that he overcharged him, you have to give him back that amount fully. So the question is, why does he have to give him back that amount fully? Why wouldn't we say, since if the price that it was overcharged was less than a sixth, and then the sale is totally kayam, then he doesn't have to give him back anything. By the case of a sixth, so we should say lahader at pachas mishtos. Let the seller give back a little bit of the money that he overcharged him. So now it should come out that he only overcharged him less than a sixth, and then the sale would be in effect. Why, when he charged him a sixth, do we say that he has to give him back everything that he overcharged? So shmami no. So from here I see, any time when you overcharged to a point that you do have to give back money, you have to give it all back. We're not going to say just give back a little bit, that it should be just a deception of less than a sixth. And over here we should apply the same thing. Like Rav Huna said, this is a proof to what Rav Huna said, that once it's too much impurities here, he's able to sift it all out.
Isn't this battle? It's not that if it's more than it's returned. It's the whole thing's battle, huh?
The Gemara is talking about the case of a shtos. Regarding the case of a shtos, where the sale is not bottle, and he has to just give him back that shtos. Regarding that case, the Gemara is proving that we see that you have to give him back all the money of that shtos. So the Gemara again says a similar svara to what we said in the previous answer. Hochi hashta, how could you compare that case to our case? Hasa meikare shava b'shava amalei. When a person is buying something, he's not buying it expecting, and it's part of the understanding that I'm going to be deceived to some extent. You're paying full price, you want to get fully for what you pay. Miu, however, so why are we making these distinctions between yes a sixth, more than a sixth, or less than a sixth? Pachis mishtos, if it's an amount that you overcharge less than a sixth, lo yediyah b'maneh, it's a very small amount that's not recognizable in the amount of a maneh, umachalinish, and therefore a person is meichel that. So the sale is fully in effect, you don't have to give back anything. Shtos, if it's the amount of a shtos, yediyah, a person sees and knows, he recognizes that he's overcharged here, v'loy machalinish, and that a person is not meichel. Yes, a mishtos. But if he was overcharged to that degree, even more than a shtos, so then mekach tosu. Then the whole thing is a mistake. Ubatl mekach, the whole thing will be bottled. So the point the Gemara is saying is, how can you compare that case over here to our case when a person is selling produce with impurities in it? Over there, it's not the pshat that it's part of the understanding that I'm going to deceive you a little bit. No, the person is paying. He wants to get exactly for what he's paying. Elamai, when it's a small amount, the pile, so he's going to be meichel that. And if it's a shtos, so then he wants to get back that amount of money. So over there you say that he has to get back his full amount of money because really he's expecting to get for what he paid for. But over here, by the impurities inside the produce, over here the person l'chatchila understands that this produce comes from the earth. There's going to be impurities inside. So he's accepting that l'chatchila. So that's the expectation. So over here, if it's more and you allow him to take some out, lav dafke, it means that we allow him to clean it out and sift it out completely.
So, over here in this sense is, where does it begin? Where is it Haino and where is it not Haino?
Correct, right.
Because starting well, Haino, L'chachil is an Aveira.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's a din of mechila. Because there's a halacha of mechila, so therefore when it's...
Okay.
Yeah, so the person is meichel. The last case the Gemara brings, also a similar discussion. Toshama, it says in the Braisa, Makabel Sodom Chavere Lita, a person is a worker, and he accepts that he's going to do a job in a property to plant trees for a person. So Hareza Mekabel Olov, now the one that hired him, the employer that hired him, let's say in an area of a beisah. Take this area of a beisah and plant trees for me over here. Now the person that hired him is Mekabel that Esa Buriya Islameya. If out of these trees that he planted, so he planted him 100 trees in this area, and out of 100 of them, 100 trees that is, 10 of them are not going to grow properly. So he's makabel that 10 are not going to grow properly, and he still has to pay him fully for the work that he did. But if it's yaisem mikan, if it's more than 10 trees that didn't grow properly, magalgalan olav esakayel, then the worker is going to have to go not only and plant that 11th tree and replant it that it should grow properly, but now he's going to have to replant and see to it that all those 11 trees should grow. So again, here you see this point very clearly that there's a certain shear that we say how much the person is ready to accept that it won't grow. But then when it comes to the case of 11 trees, and that he's not ready to accept, now he has to go and plant it all. So the same thing is over here regarding the impurities, that once it's more than that amount that he accepts, like Rav Huna said, we should allow him to sift it all out to have clean produce. But so the Gemara again says it's not the same thing. Omer Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yeshua explains, Kol yasem mikan, once it's more than 10 trees, if it's 11 trees that are not growing properly, kabal litam etchila dami. This is like a significant portion of a property for itself. Just like in the beginning, if you're coming to do a job and there's this area of 11 trees that are not being planted. So what are you going to say? Oh, I have this job to plant these 11 trees over here. I'm only going to plant one of them and not the other 10. Now when these 11 trees are not growing properly, it's like a significant thing for itself. It's like you're coming now in the beginning to do a job for him. Of course, you have to plant all 11. It's a significant portion of your job that you didn't do that has to be done. So therefore, over here, you're going to have to plant them all. Mashenkin, when it comes to the impurities that are in a produce and the sale, that's something that is part of the understanding, part of the expectation that things that come from the ground have impurities in it. And over there, lav dafka, you're able to clean it out, or to clean all of it out. Now the Gemara goes back to what it says in the Mishnah regarding persons selling a martiv shel yayin. What did it say in the Mishnah? If you're selling somebody a seller of wine and you're selling him 100 barrels of wine, so the buyer that is, expects or is ready to accept that out of those 100 barrels, 10 of them are going to be what the Mishnah calls kaisis, wine that's already not in the best condition. It's already beginning to sour or it's going sour. So now the Gemara here is going to go through a lengthy discussion. What exactly is the case? What was the terms or the words, the language that was used in this sale? Hey Chidami, what is the case here? If the seller tells him that I'm selling you a cellar of wine, he doesn't add anything more than that, just those words, then kasha. It's a question on our Mishnah. The Gemara here is going to bring a braisa that's going to talk about different types of languages that the seller may have used, and as we'll see from the braisa, none of it fits into what it says in our Mishnah. If he added the word zeh, this seller of wine I'm selling you, kasha. It's also going to be a question on our Mishnah. And if he just says I'm selling you this seller, he doesn't even mention wine, Kashi, it's also going to be a question in our Mishnah. Why? The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa as follows, regarding these three expressions. If he says, Martav Shoyayin ani moichalach, I'm selling you a seller of wine, so then the Braisa says, Noisin lo yayin shekula yafe. You have to provide for the buyer wine that's all good quality. Yayin, Martav Shoyayin means wine, good quality wine. Now, if he says, Martav zeh shoyayin ani moichalach, it's this seller. Why is he adding that word this? This means take it as is. That's what the word zeh is basically saying. So over here we say, Noisin lo yayin hanimkar b'chanus. He gives him wine in the quality of the way it's sold in the store. Meaning, this is not really good, perfect quality wine the way it is still in the cellar, but this is already wine that's already being sold in the store. Could even be wine that's already beginning to go sour. And it's made to buy in the store and drink right away. You can't keep it for too much longer. That's why he told him zeh. And if he says, Martav zeh ani moichalach, and he says, this cellar I'm selling to you, he doesn't even mention wine. He just says, what's in this cellar I sell to you, then afilu kule chaimitz, even if it turns out that it all already went bad, it's all vinegar, higiyai, that this is what the seller gets. So what do we see here in this Braisa? That in none of the cases did the Braisa say the halacha that it said in the Mishnah, that you take the wine and you accept 10 out of the 100 barrels that should be sour. In this Braisa, it didn't say any of that, in any of the languages that are used. So the Gemara says, no, la'olam, really, the case of our Mishnah is the amalei martav shayayin stam. Like the first case of the Braisa that he tells him, I'm selling you a cellar of wine. He didn't say zeh, he says a seller of wine, yeah. Now, utni bereisha the Braisa, you're going to have to add into the reisha of the Braisa, umekabel olav esa kaisasais lameya. That he has to give him all good quality wine, but 10 out of those barrels can be kaisasais wine that's beginning to sour already. That's how you have to learn in the Braisa, and that's what it means in the Mishnah, and that's what it said in the Mishnah as well. But the Gemara asks on this from a different Braisa. Ubistam mi mekabel. When you just say, I'm selling you a cellar of wine, without adding the word zeh, is the buyer accepting that any of it should be going sour already? But Rab Chia taught, a person that sells one barrel, a barrel of wine to his friend. Then he has to give him a barrel that's all good quality. So over here it says you sell a barrel of wine and he's selling chavis yayin. You have to give it to him all good quality. So it's the same thing over here. If you're selling a cellar of wine, it also has to be all good quality. What's the difference? So the Gemara says, no, there is a difference. Shani chavis, by a barrel it's different. The kule chad chamrehu, it's one barrel of wine. So over here, if you're selling a person one barrel of wine, so it has to be all good quality wine. When you're selling a person an entire cellar of wine, and there's 100 barrels there, over there, the buyer has to expect that it's possible that 10 of them will not be good quality. And that's the halacha of our Mishnah. But the Gemara brings now another Braisa, which is a contradiction to the first Braisa here. V'hatani Rav Zvid b'debei Rabbi Shia. Rav Zvid taught by Rabbi Shia, Martav shayayin ani moichalach. If the seller says, I'm selling you a cellar of wine, Noisin lo yayin shekula yafe. He has to give him wine that's all good quality. Martav zeh shoyayin ani moichalach. If he adds the word zeh, take it as is, then we say Noisin lo yayin shekula yafe. Over here in this Braisa, here is where it said, like it said in our Mishnah, you give him all good wine, but a makabel all of esa kaisasis lameya. But 10 out of the 100 barrels that he gave him, he has to be ready to accept that it's going to be a wine that's already going sour. And then the Braisa over here adds, V'zeu oitzer sheshanu chachame b'mishnaseinu. This is the oitzer, the seller of wine, that it said in our Mishnah that he's ready to accept, that the buyer has to accept 10 barrels of wine that are going bad already, because he said the word zeh. So what do you see over here? Before the Gemara said, what's the pshat in our Mishnah? That he told him, stop, I'm selling you a martav shayayin, without the word zeh. And then is the one that we say that he has to give him all good quality besides 10 barrels. But over here in this price, it says, no, only when he adds the word zeh. This, take it as is. Then I could say that it means that you have to be ready to accept that some of it, that 10 of it will not be good. So the Gemara therefore says, Ella, therefore we must say, Masnisin nami the amalei zeh. You're right. Not like we said before, that our Mishnah is in a case where he tells him, I'm selling him a martav shal yayin. No, the Mishnah is in a case where he's selling him, and he said martav zeh shal yayin. And that's why he's accepting 10 of it that it could be bad, or going bad. So, but now the Gemara asks, if that's the case, kashya zeh azeh. There's a contradiction over here between these two Braisas, the first Braisa we quoted, and the second brisa that Rav Zvid taught regarding the case where he says Martiv Zeh Shal Yayin. What's the contradiction? In the first brisa it says that when he says Martiv Zeh Shal Yayin, because you added the word Zeh, so all of it could be wine. That's like the wine that's sold in the store, which is already beginning to sour. All of it. In the second brisa it says, like it says in our Mishnah, that when you say Zeh, it means you have to give it to him all good quality and only 10 of it. He should accept that it's already going bad. So there's a contradiction there regarding when he uses this expression of Zeh. Says the Gemara, Loi Kashya, it's not a contradiction. Ha, the Amalei Lemikpa. In one case, he's saying that he's buying this for cooking, and Ha, the Amalei Lemikpa. And in another case, he did not tell him that he's buying it for cooking. And the Gemara explains what's the difference. The Rav Zvid, in the Brais of Rav Zvid, where it says that when he says Zeh, you have to give him all good quality, besides 10, that he has to be ready to accept that it's already going sour. The reason why it has to mostly be good quality is because he told him it's for the purpose of cooking. When a person is using wine for cooking, you're adding a little bit of wine to the ingredients in cooking. That's wine that you're planning on storing and keeping for a while. So you need it to be good quality to be able to store it for a while. Therefore, over here, he has to give him mostly all good wine. Braisa, the first Braisa, though, he didn't tell him that he's buying this wine for cooking, meaning it's going to be used to drink immediately. So the wine is you're going to drink it right away. That's even if it's wine that begins to sour. It's like the wine that's sold in the store that's not already perfect quality. You're going to drink it right away. So therefore, that's good wine for such a kind of sale. So now the Gemara concludes based on this. What's the halachas that come out of here? Hilkach, it comes out as follows. If the seller says, Martiv Shal Yayin, I'm selling you a cellar of wine. And then V'amalei, the buyer says, Lemikpa, I need it for cooking. So then Neisin Lo Yayin Shekula Yafa. In this case, he has to give him wine that's all perfect quality. Nothing, no exceptions here, because he didn't say the word Zeh. He said, Martiv Shal Yayin, I need a cellar of wine. And he made it clear, I want it all for cooking. It has to be all good quality. Now, if he added Martiv Zeh Shal Yayin, says, I'm selling you this as is. So then by adding that word Zeh, but the buyer says, I need it for cooking, or the seller says, he says, it's going to be for cooking. So then he has to give him all good quality wine because it's for cooking. But he does have to be ready to accept that 10 out of the barrels of 100 barrels are going to be already kaisesized, they're beginning to sour. That's why he added the word Zeh, meaning that there may be some of the wine here that's not perfect, and you have to accept that. Now, when he says, Martiv Zeh Shal Yayin, when the seller says, I'm selling you this cellar of wine as is, he didn't add and say, this is wine that's good for cooking. Then, like it said in the first Braisa, in such a case, he gives him wine the way it's sold in the store, which is all wine. All the wine could be of the quality that's sold in the store, which is not perfect quality anymore. It's already wine that's beginning to sour. Okay, but now the Gemara here will discuss the case of Martiv Shal Yayin, which was brought up in the beginning, but the Gemara goes through this again now. So now based on this, the Gemara asks, Martiv Shal Yayin. So in the case where the seller says, I'm selling you a cellar of wine. And he didn't add and say that this is good wine for cooking. So what's going to be the halacha in this case? So over here, the shaila of the Gemara is, on one hand, since he said Martiv Shal Yayin, and he didn't add the word Zeh, that means this is good quality wine. If you would have wanted to express to the buyer that there may be some wine that's not good, he should have said the word Zeh. He didn't say Zeh, as is. He said Martiv Shal Yayin. So that makes it sound like, take this cellar of wine. On the other hand, though, he didn't add the word Lemikpa. He didn't say that it's for cooking. So that sounds like that it's made to drink right away. So what's going to be the halach in this case? Now, the Rashbami points out that the one that asked the Iboya understands that from the two brises that we just learned before, you can prove this halacha. But the Gemara is going to point out that there's really a contradiction between the two brises regarding this shaila here. The Gemara is going to explain it all. So the Gemara brings a machlekes. Pligi bar, Ravacha and Ravina argued about this. Chad Omar, one opinion is Makabel, that when he just says Martiv Shal Yayin, because he didn't add that it's for cooking, so then the buyer has to be ready to accept that 10 of it will be not perfect quality. Chadoma, but another opinion over here is no, loy makabel. You say Martiv Shal Yayin, that means that it has to all be perfect quality. Amandoma makabel. So the one that says that he does have to accept 10 that won't be good quality, daik med Rav Zvid. He was medayik from the second brayse that Rav Zvid said, because the Ktani, what did Rav Zvid say? Mart of shoyayin ani moichalach. I'm selling you a seller of wine. Noisin layayin shekula yafa. He has to give him all. All of it has to be perfect quality. And by kimne, what did we explain? What is Rav Zvid talking about? The amalela mikpah. The reason that all has to be perfect quality is because he's told him this is for cooking. So from this we understand, time with amalela mikpah. The reason that all has to be good is because it was for cooking. But if you didn't tell him that it's all for cooking, then makabel. Then you do have to be ready to accept that 10 of it is not going to be good quality. Now, so the Rishonim here say that according to this, going back to our Mishnah, this could be the case of our Mishnah. Before, in the beginning of the Amud, the Gemara concluded that the case of our Mishnah is where he said Martav Zeshayayin, and that's when he's ready to accept 10 that are not good. But now, according to this opinion, even when you just say Martav Shayayin, because you didn't clarify that it's l'mikpah for cooking, you also have to be ready to accept that 10 of it is not going to be perfect quality, and that would be the case of our Mishnah as well. Now, the other opinion, the one that says that when you say Marta Shoyayin, even without adding that it's for cooking, it has to all be perfect quality. Daik me braise, he's medayik from the first braise. The Ktani there it says Marta Shoyayin ani moichalach. I'm selling you a seller of wine. He has to give him wine that's all good. We explained that what is that brayse talking about? Even if he did not tell him that it's for cooking. When the Gemara before answered the contradiction of the two brayses in the case of Yayin Zeh, over there it explained that this brayse is not for cooking. And still it says that you have to give him all perfect quality of wine. Okay, so basically now it really comes out that we have two braises. You could be medayik from one braise like this, another braise like this. So there's really a contradiction here. So the Gemara will answer and explain this. The opinion that's medayik from the second braise, from Rav Zvid, that over there I see that he does not have to, that he, again, from the second braise from Rav Zvid, we're medayik, that he does accept to have 10 barrels that are not going to be good. Because Rav Zvid said only if he adds the word lemikpah, that it's for cooking, then it has to be all perfect. Otherwise, he has to accept that 10 will not be good. Kashya braise. So then there's a question from the first braise. And the first braise, it's mashma, that when you just say stam, yayin, martav shal yayin, it has to be all perfect quality. So the Gemara says, Chasure mechsere v'hochi ketani. We're going to have to say that in that braise, there's something that's missing, and you have to teach and learn in that braise as follows. When does it say in the beginning of that braise that it all has to be perfect quality, only if you told him that it's for cooking? But if you did not tell him that it's for cooking, makabel, he does have to be ready to accept 10 barrels of wine that are not going to be good. And then, then the first braise continues. If he tells him that I'm selling you this seller of wine, and even if even if he did not tell him that it's for cooking, he gives him wine that the way it's sold in the store, which is not all good quality of wine. That's the pshat in the first braise, according to this opinion. Now, according to the second opinion, according to the opinion that's medayik from the first braise, that when you say martav shel yayin, it means that you have to give him all perfect quality of wine. Kashi Rav Zvid. So then there's a question from the second braise that Rav Zvid said, and over there we explained that you only have to give him all perfect quality only because you told him lemikpah, that it's for cooking. So that it's mashpah from that if he did not tell him that it's for cooking, then he does have to accept barrels that are not going to be good. So it's a contradiction to the first braise. So according to this opinion, the Gemara says, no, hu adin, the truth is, in the second braise of Rav Zvid, that even if he did not spell out that it's for cooking, when you say martav shel yayin, it has to be all perfect quality, and he's not accepting any barrels that are not going to be good. The only reason we explained that Braise is speaking about what he told him that it's for cooking, that was for the seifa of the Braise. Regarding the seifa of the Braise, where there's a contradiction when he says zeh, does that mean that he only accepts 10 barrels that are not going to be good? Or does that mean that all of it has to be, or could be, wine that's sold in the store that's not good quality? So in the seifa of the braise, we're saying that it's talking about the mikpah. But in the reisha of the braise, it's even in a case where he did not tell him the mikpah. Still over there, the braise is saying that he accepts that what is it? The second braise of it say that in a case where he said martav shel yayin, he has to give him all perfect wine, whether he told him cooking, whether he didn't, he has to give him all perfect quality of wine. Okay, that's the conclusion of this scene. The next scene is already moving over here.